best entertainment on the earth. Tune in for Comics with Perch.
Hey everybody, this is Perch. Let's talk about anthologies again. I think, by the way, I've talked about anthologies a bunch, and I know that several of you do not like anthologies. I also think that we're going to see a tremendous increase in anthologies over the next 2-3 years. I think that in many cases, the format of it, being able to commission just small stories, cram into one book, ship it out as one thing, I think that's becoming very appealing to the companies to market and produce, and both for the costs and also kind of how they can promote it. And it's, in many ways, it's like hedging your bets. Like, let's just shove a bunch of stuff in here and hope that one of those things captures some audience. And that seems to be what strategy is. But anyway, this mail goes like this. Hey, Perch, are you sick of the woke yet? Consider buying my anti-woke NFT. Now you're talking. Okay. That's thinking with your brain. All right. Nah, just kidding. My question is about anthologies. I've heard comic YouTubers and others drag anthology books format. And while I understand some of this, if a book only deals in 8-page stories, what's the harm in full-length story anthologies? A lot of characters who couldn't sustain a solo ongoing might squeak by if you put some B and C listers together and gave them an ongoing monthly $7.99 anthology, put it on cheap paper, and used all the combined love of all the characters to sell one book. Make it so if you like, say, a Hawkman or a Constantine or a Midnighter, you have to buy this floppy and get all three. In doing this, your book's appealing to several fan bases at once rather than relying on fans of one to sell it. Publishers shouldn't take the piss and use it to sell unpopular characters. This should be for the established cult following heroes who just can't hold an ongoing in today's market. I'm saying this after reading Future State Worlds of War. If this $7.99 book with a Superman, Mr. Miracle, and Midnighter story had been an ongoing monthly or every other month, I'd be down. The format is good. Midnighter gets his own floppy length story here, and they're good. Why not make this a regular format for 3 to 4 undeserved characters? And who knows, if one finds new life in the anthology, you might be able to spin them out into an ongoing. I don't know anything about Midnighter before this, but now I'd happily read his ongoing if he had one. All right, good mail. That is the way to do it. I think the reason why they don't do what you say is kind of identified in the page count and kind of the purpose of why they're doing the anthology. So the reason why they're doing it is simply because they can commission a relatively short story. They can get a bunch of people into the book. They don't have to pay as much because it's not a full-length comic that they're soliciting from some of these people. And it allows them to kind of not worry about, the ongoing. The oversight to the anthologies is really low. You don't have to really worry about continuity, and people don't. You should worry about continuity, but people don't. You don't have to worry about stories leading from one to the other. Now, Batman Urban Legends is sort of trying to do this a little bit more, and it's kind of your idea, only still with shortened stories. But I think that if you look back into the 60s and 70s, there were certainly team-up books, be it Green Lantern and Green Arrow or Superman and Batman, where you would see these, even Marvel 2-in-1 sort of had that method. Not really, I guess. That's not really the case. But the idea of being able to take two characters and combine them into a book was popular. And it tended to do well. And it did what you said, where they could get a character who couldn't quite sustain an ongoing title. They could get that character over and an anthology, and then as the audience got built up, they could spin it out into their own comic, and that's how that worked. So, it's a good idea, and it should be something that people do. Now, the challenge with it, again, it's the cost. When you're up to $7.99, I think that that might work for you, but that price point does start to break people, and it would be hard to get some characters over if you weren't buying into an event or buying into something special. Some people certainly did for Future State, but there was this idea that, that it was 2 months, it was fairly limited, they understood where their costs were going, and, it wasn't this ongoing commitment of comics. Plus, people were kind of under the impression that Future State might actually matter, that it would have some deeper purpose, so people will kind of go into that. If suddenly you launched a $7.99 3 comics in one, I think you'd struggle at that price. Now, if you did go with cheaper paper, and I think the cheaper paper is a good idea. Now, the bad news with the cheaper paper is that it's unclear whether you would actually get the cost savings at scale with the cheaper paper. And I know, like, people point out Peter Samedi does, but Peter Samedi is going direct to print with these, and he controls his run. He doesn't have these massive at scale deals that, say, Marvel, DC, Image, and others do. And so they're getting price breaks on their printing. And you could say, well, wouldn't they get then even a bigger price break if they went to newsprint? And it's unclear that they would. Several of these printers are not set up to do that anymore. They're set up for the bigger paper. They get a bigger discount for volume on that. It's unclear. In fact, pretty unlikely that they'd get the same level of discount on newsprints, and newsprint is coming in cheaper, and the printer wants to make their money. So it's unclear whether that would actually lead to cost savings. But in theory, yes. I guess the other piece it's worth saying is that even if the publisher found a way to get the comics printed cheaper, would they pass all those savings on to the consumer? And if you're Marvel and DC, that answer is almost certainly no. But would be good in theory. So I think, but leave all that aside. Let's say you could print on cheaper paper or on newsprint. You could put 3 comics or 4 comics together at a full 20-page length, and you could market it as a combo book. Or I don't really think you're dealing with an anthology at that point. You're dealing with some kind of combo product. But it's yeah, I think that would be great. I think that people should try and do that. I think that you used Hawkman. Hawkman's a good example. It's a character that has a lot of following. It's a character that people want to read, but hasn't been able to just sustain an ongoing title. There's some other people who are in that camp as well. You might argue Jon Stewart is in that camp. Can't support an ongoing comic. Shazam. These guys are known characters, big characters, and in theory they should support an ongoing. But when they do, those books kind of clock in around 35,000. So, if they could put all 4 of these together, put a reasonable price, maybe you bring in, many different people into one. I mean, there's a lot of things that would kind of have to happen in order for it to be a success, because one of the other negatives is that if you put a bunch of characters together, what you hope is happening is that the fans of all those individual characters will kind of all come in and purchase the book. What tends to happen is the least popular of the characters that are promoted tends to drag the others backward. I don't know exactly why that is, but the numbers show that's more or less the case over the last 30, 40 years. It tends to rise to the ceiling of the weakest member of the book, which doesn't make a whole lot of sense, but there you go. But anyway, it's certainly worth trying. I definitely think the anthology format, which, as mentioned, the comic publishers are addicted to at this point and looking to do more of it. I think that has to change. This isn't a sustainable model what they have going on right now, and it's none of these stories inherently matter. And in many cases, if there's something that even shows a tiny glimmer of success, of market interest, then the comic publishers will immediately spin it out into a one-shot or ongoing or limited series. But even those are not strong enough to really, get somewhere. So, but I think I'd rather see something like that and try and do a all boats rise kind of effect, rather than what we've often seen, which is, let's just launch an ongoing, not put a lot of marketing or care into it because it doesn't sell high enough for us to, let it kind of dangle out there, not selling a whole lot for a while, and then ultimately cancel it, within, I don't know, 10, 12 issues, sometimes even less than that. That's clearly not a recipe for success. So maybe there's an answer there. I do want them to get away from the 4 to 5 page anthology stories where it's like, boy, we've been fighting villains, and that's tough. But now it's time for a little like Saturday morning life lesson where we eat some cereal together and talk about friendship. Hey, everybody loves cereal. Like, gross. I mean, that none of that is compelling to anyone, and yet that continues to be pumped out at a rapid pace. They're easy stories to write because they really are. I mean, a lot of the anthology stories today are 4 to 5 page drawn out versions of The More You Know from G.I. Joe. That's all they are. The little 20-second, hey, don't litter. That's it. Hero shows up. Some angry, fascist Nazi characters are kicking over trash cans. They are easily defeated. and then they take pictures with fans, and I love being a superhero squee, and that's the story. I have to believe that somewhere at Marvel or DC, they've got just like piles of thousands of these 4 to 5 page just generic carbon copy stories somewhere out there. But actually, that's a depressing thought. Anyway, thanks for the question. Thanks for writing in. If any of you have a question you want to get answered here, just look at the description to this video. You can see all the information you need to know. Send me an email, and I'll get right on it. Thanks for listening.